Breakfast with TT. Weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. on Power 98.7.
All right, so let's go to that story that we've been talking about. The announcement yesterday that the South African Legal Practice Council announcing that amendments to the remuneration structure for candidate attorneys and pupils are undergoing practical vocational training. Now, these changes will be in effect from this month, August 2024, and are part of an ongoing effort to standardize and regulate the legal profession, ensuring fair compensation for young professionals entering the field. According to the LPC's gazetted notice, candidate attorneys in rural areas will receive a minimum annual remuneration of 72,000 Rand, which is around 6,000 Rand per month. In contrast, those in urban areas will earn a minimum of 96,000 Rand per annum or 8,000 Rand monthly. Joining me on the line is the Senior Legal Officer at the Legal Practice Council, Brian Mhlongo. Good morning and thanks so much for your time.
Good morning, TT, and good morning to your listeners.
Thank you so much. Let's start firstly by explaining what the situation has been prior to the latest amendments.
Prior to the latest amendments, the situation has been in such a manner that there's been a lot of issues, especially when it comes to minimum remuneration for candidate legal practitioners, where there's been concerns about exploitation, inconsistency in remuneration across the profession. So that also brought the rise or the need to urgently deal with the provision of Section 27, subsection 2 of the Legal Practice Act, which actually mandates the LPC to regulate the payment of remuneration, including the minimum amounts payable to candidate legal practitioners.
So up to now, up to this point, was this not regulated? Was this left to the discretion of law firms?
Initially, it was regulated according to the old Attorneys Act, which was the Act 53 of 1979, where Section 8 subsection 2 of that Act actually stipulated the amount for candidate attorneys at that time, which was 50 rands, which never changed until the Act was repealed, and then the LPA came into effect. And then Section 27 of the LPA actually mandates the LPC to also determine and then stipulate the amounts payable for both candidate attorneys and pupils, being those who are training to become advocates.
All right, and tell us about how you reached the amount. So, what was the calculation and what were some of the factors that went into the figure that you eventually settled on, or the figures that you settled on?
That we settled on. What happened was it started way back, still in 2022. Where the LPC decided to engage with the relevant stakeholders and also conduct surveys to the profession to determine or to just get some feel of how much law firms are paying candidate legal practitioners. And from conducting those surveys, we then established that, this is the benchmark, or this is the amount, for instance, that a number of law firms can afford to pay or would be able to pay as a minimum, because we're dealing with the gaps are quite actually even embarrassing. They're too much in that some candidate legal practitioners don't even get paid at all or remunerated at all. And some get wages that are even below what, for instance, you would be paying your domestic worker for cleaning your house. So these amounts were determined also looking at the cost of living and also economic conditions, since we also just came back and recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. So from there, that's where the council decided and looked at all the other amounts there. That's where the council decided and looked at all the other amounts being paid out there and what the market is like out there, and that's how they determine those amounts.
And is there a cap on what law firms can pay? Because, unfortunately, the way these things work, even with minimum wage, people tend to think that that's it, that's the limit, that's the cap. You shouldn't pay more or a cent less or a cent more. Do you regulate the cap in terms of, for whatever reason, what you allow law firms to pay candidate attorneys?
TT, there's no cap. The minimum remuneration is just the base or the standard. Law firms can compensate candidate legal practitioners even more if needs be, depending on their financial capabilities as a law firm, and the amount of work that the candidate legal practitioners would be doing or dealing with during their practical vocational training. So there is no cap. There's actually some other law firms, especially the big law firms, and also even Legal Aid South Africa, they pay them or candidate legal practitioners quite a really reasonable amount. So even judging from those differences, because they, for instance, with for legal aid, most probably the amounts would even range to close to 19,000-20,000 rands. Yeah, I'm not sure anymore, but you can even see from that amount to the basic minimum wage that we've set that it's quite a gap, but it would be maybe reasonable or plausible just for candidate attorneys to be able to have a living.
And just to conclude, Brian Mhlongo, we had a listener who is actually an attorney practicing, saying that the LPC should have actually considered mandating that law firms take on candidate attorneys every 3 years. Otherwise, you are likely to find that some will not take them on, citing this now increased minimum wage that should be paid to them.
Yeah, that's why I would actually just encourage all legal practitioners that they shouldn't see this as a breach or not even a breach, a barrier to the profession, but rather than an opportunity to uplift the integrity of the profession and ensure that we're supporting and valuing and building the future of our candidate attorneys and their careers.
And how often will you review this?
The LPC will be reviewing these minimum wages from time to time, depending on the change in the cost of living and economic performance of the country. So that's when those amendments will be made to just adjust to those economic conditions. Yes.
All right, we'll leave it there. Brian Mhlongo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, TT, for having me.
He's a senior legal officer at the Legal Practice Council. It's 7:01.
Power News.